Hi, everyone. Hi, Substack family. I'm so thrilled to see you all, and we're going to give you all a moment to join this conversation on Substack. I'm really enjoying the platform. I just wrote a whole essay about the Gilded Age, which I'm watching on TV, so I'll be publishing that soon. It was really fun to write. But one of the things I'm enjoying about Substack is an opportunity to talk and meet with people and share these conversations, which I hope are helpful with all of you. And I think, during these turbulent times, a lot of people are saying, why shouldn't I run for office? What about you? Have you ever thought about it? And that is one way to change the system and to make your voice heard. And a person who started asking herself that very question was Dr. Annie Andrews. Dr. Andrews is a pediatrician. She's also a mom of three from South Carolina. She decided to run for office. It's not her first rodeo. She ran for Congress against Nancy Mace in 2022, but 6 weeks ago, she made an announcement that she is running for Lindsey Graham's Senate seat in the state of South Carolina. So I started seeing stuff about Dr. Andrews on social media, and I was like, who is this person? I want to get to know her. I want to understand why she's running for office. So I reached out to her. And she said that she would love to have this conversation. So, Annie Andrews, welcome to my Substack. I guess that's what I would call it. And thank you so much for spending some time talking with me this afternoon.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Katie. It's really a pleasure to be here and have this conversation with you.
Well, we've got a lot to cover, so let me get to it. And someone's from Columbia, South Carolina, Cindy Morrison. Hi, Cindy, said love her. But I thought we should start. And Annie, by the way, told me I could call her Annie and not Dr. Andrews. And you call me Katie, Annie. I'm kidding, but I'm just kidding. But let's start by talking a little bit about you and your life. And I'm curious, as someone who really admires people in medicine and scientists, I'm curious what compelled you to become a doctor and specifically a pediatrician.
Yeah, so it's actually kind of a fun story. I decided to be a doctor when I was 4.5. I told my
What?
I know.
Were you
I
playing doctor with your neighbor or something?
honestly have no idea where the idea came from. I did not know any doctors. No one in my family was a doctor. The only doctor I knew was my own pediatrician, who I didn't like because his hands were always cold.
And he
But I
probably
told
was giving you shots, right?
That's right. Exactly. But I told my preschool teacher when I was 4.5 that when I grow up, I want to be a doctor and a mommy with three kids. And I know that because we were doing an activity. She wrote that down. I drew a picture next to it. My own mother saved that, and I have it framed in my home now. And, that's exactly what I am, a doctor and a mom with three kids. So I spent my whole academic career solely focused on being a physician. The very first day as a third-year medical student that I walked into the Children's Hospital in Cincinnati, Ohio, I knew I was going to be a pediatrician. People think children's hospitals are these really scary and depressing places, and certainly some families' most tragic moments occur within the walls of a children's hospital. But children's hospitals are also full of hope, and people are in their darkest days, but they rise to the occasion, loving parents at the bedside of their chronically ill children. And it is an incredibly uplifting place to work. Also, because everyone who goes to work every day at a children's hospital is there for the same reason. They're there to treat sick and injured children. And so I spent my entire career as a pediatrician working in children's hospitals. And it's a job that I absolutely love. And because I believe in term limits, a job that I plan to return to someday.
Well, that's interesting. And that brings me to my next question, which is you had a couple of key moments, I know, Annie, that inspired you to go down this path. And the first was as I understand it, the 2016 election.
Yes, I think a lot of women my age decided that was their moment to get off the sidelines. And my story of the night of the 2016 election was my youngest daughter, my sweet Evelyn, was born 6 days before that election. So I was a weary, tired mother of a newborn baby girl. She's my third baby. And I was up all night, of course, as newborn moms are, nursing her and putting her down, nursing her, putting her down, watching the election returns come in. And before that, I had put my oldest daughter to bed, telling her she was going to wake up and we were going to have our first female president. And I was so excited about that, to share that moment with my oldest daughter. And as the reality of what was happening in America that night started to settle in, I just had this something changed inside of me where I was looking at this beautiful baby girl's face, not understanding the world I had brought her into, and understanding, most importantly, that I was going to have to do something to build the future that I know that my children and all 73 million children in this country so desperately need and deserve. So that was a real wake up moment for me, that I wasn't going to be able to be just a passive observer, and I was going to have to get involved to create the change I want to see.
I know you had some other moments, but I'm curious, as you're describing that scene and telling your daughter that uh, she was going to wake up and we were going to have the first female president. What was it like that next morning, telling her that that was not going to happen?
I think so many parents shared in this struggle because, I was pretty involved in, bringing my children along. We had the campaign signs in our yard. So, how do you explain to a school age child that the bad guy won, that the guy that says mean things won, that the guy that lies won? And that was one of the biggest parenting struggles I've had, because they understood what I was fighting for. And then to lose like that was a very difficult moment. But, I tried to use it as an experience. Again, I was a very tired, sleepless mom of a newborn, so probably not my best parenting moment, but trying to explain, showing her then with the work that I've done since that moment that, we have to create the change we want to see. And just because we lose once doesn't mean we pick up our toys and walk away. We just learn something and we try harder the next time.
That was the first moment, the Hillary Clinton election defeat. And then another moment, I think, reinforced this notion that you had to get off the sidelines, Annie, and that was the shooting in Parkland, Florida. Tell us about that and how that led to you getting involved in Moms Demand Action.
Yeah, so the shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida was the first big school shooting that I experienced as the mom of a school-age child. And that is something only parents in America can even relate to. And that is a tragedy in and of itself, that we can mark our time as parents based on what school shooting happened when our children were certain ages. I didn't know anybody who was in the building that day. Some of the survivors I'm now proud to call my friends and colleagues in the gun violence prevention movement. But in the days after that shooting, as I was dropping my older daughter off in her kindergarten drop off line, watching her get out of the car and march into that school building, I felt an overwhelming sense of fear for my own children's safety, and frustration and anger about the way that all the adults in the room had failed our children so profoundly that they don't know if they're physically or psychologically safe in their own classrooms. So I remember, again, dropping her off, going home, deciding I had to do something about it. I actually picked up the phone and I called South Carolina's two senators, Tim Scott and Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham, as he never does, didn't answer the phone. No one answered the phone. I left voicemails. And I hung up the phone, I started crying, and that was not a typical reaction for me, and I knew that meant that I've gotta do something. So I went online to Facebook. I found our local chapter of Moms Demand Action, which is our nation's largest gun violence prevention organization, and I signed up to go to the next meeting in my community. And then that day after work, I forced myself to walk into that room of strangers, even though I would have much rather gone home to be with my own babies. I walked into that room, and joining that group, walking into that meeting, truly changed the trajectory of my personal and professional life in an incredibly profound way. So when people are looking for something to do and feeling so overwhelmed in this moment we find ourselves in, I like to say just do one small thing, because you don't know what that one small thing can lead to. And that's exactly what happened to me after I got off the sidelines and joined Moms Demand Action.
And it did something else for you, I know, Annie. It helped you find your voice. You never really envisioned yourself as a politician, but getting involved politically in the gun violence movement or preventing gun violence really gave you the confidence. Tell us about that. I mean, tell us how you grew as a person and you gained the skills that you would need to run for office.
Yeah, really everything I learned about the power of my voice how to be an effective activist, advocate, how to talk to lawmakers, how to give testimony, how to write an op-ed. I learned from Moms Demand Action. And I think most importantly, gaining that sense of self-efficacy, understanding that I myself as an individual have agency and can create change. That was the most important lesson. And my confidence just grew and grew and grew. And I think it's not a coincidence that these rooms I was in were mostly full of women who had similar and often very different life experiences than mine. And we all worked together and supported each other. And the more time I spent in the state house in South Carolina, listening to lawmakers debate bills, watching them respond to sometimes my expert testimony as a pediatrician and a gun violence prevention researcher, I very quickly began to realize that I am more than qualified to serve in elected office. And so are all of us. Those of us who care about our communities, who have passion to create a better world, are more than qualified. And I don't think that that needs really to be said in this day and age. But it just gave me all the confidence in the world to step into these spaces that I never in a million years thought that I would.
And that's something important for everyone to remember. Women so often think they're underqualified, and that's something that men rarely believe, that they are not qualified. And I think we have to accept and own our power and our potential. And I'm so glad that you have done both. Well, you decided to run for office and you ran against Nancy Mace. Um, okay, I think I can be honest on Substack, but she does not seem like a good person. And I don't know. The things I've read about her, the things I've seen about her, uh, she seems to embody sort of the notion that cruelty is the point, right? And but yet she won by 14 points when you ran against her in 2022. Talk about what you learned from that experience.
Yes, and thank you for speaking honestly about my former opponent. I have to live the rest of my life knowing that I'm someone who lost to that woman, and I'm not proud of it, but I'm proud of the fight that I put up that election cycle. She won in 2020 that race by a couple points, and then they gerrymandered the district because they knew that she was politically vulnerable. They knew that Republicans are way out of step with most Americans on issues like gun violence and reproductive health care access. And so they gerrymandered the district to make it really nearly impossible for a Democrat to win. But I learned a lot. Number one, I learned that I'm not afraid of a fight, that I can stand up to someone like Nancy Mace, and therefore I'm more than prepared to stand up to someone like Lindsey Graham. I also understand that we can't just fight when we know we can win. We have to run anytime, no matter how steep the odds are, because running matters even if you don't win on election night. Because during that campaign, Roe fell. And as a woman, a mother, and a physician on the ballot, I was able to give voice to all the women in South Carolina who felt like their government had abandoned them. I was able to speak very clearly on that issue in a way that a lot of other candidates would not have been able to. And I'm very proud of the fact that my very first TV ad during that election cycle in South Carolina was about gun violence and its impact on America's children. So I changed the conversation in my district in South Carolina, and we got national attention because I was running a different kind of race. But I know that I'm brave enough to do this. I know that I'm strong enough to do this because I did it before. And I know that running matters even if you don't win on election day.
And so now you're running against Lindsey Graham, who's been in the Senate since what year did Lindsey Graham become a senator? I think it was 1875, wasn't it? I'm kidding, everyone, but he's been there for a long time, right?
Yes, he's been a U.S. Senator for 22 years, which is literally half of my lifetime.
So tell me why you decided to take on Lindsey Graham and sort of some of the things that you thought about before you made that decision.
Yeah, so like so many people, I was deeply invested in the Harris Walz campaign. You know, I was one of four women who organized the call that broke Zoom, the Answer the Call, White Women for Kamala Harris. We raised $11 million, me and my friend Shannon Watts and Liz Minnella. And so I was devastated, just like we all were when they lost in November and, kind of fell into a bit of a funk. And it wasn't until after the inauguration and when I started to see the cabinet appointments and when I started to see people like RFK Jr. get appointed to lead the Department of Health and Human Services that I understood that staying on the sidelines this election cycle was not going to be an option for me. And then I started talking to people in South Carolina and understood the opportunity. We have Lindsey Graham, who is a national villain, who epitomizes the downfall of the modern day Republican Party on the ballot in 2026 in South Carolina. He's more unpopular than he has ever been because he's more corrupt than he has ever been. His approval rating is 34%, 10 points lower than Donald Trump's. So I saw this as an opportunity to run against a national villain who has no business serving in the US Senate anymore, and an opportunity to use my platform that I had been building to draw attention to the issues that are impacting South Carolina kids and families. And I think almost more importantly, people in South Carolina deserve to have something that they feel hopeful about. Democrats have won statewide in North Carolina and Georgia in recent years, and there's no reason South Carolina can't be a part of that story as well. But
But
we
it's
won't
pretty
know.
I was going to say, sorry, Annie, to interrupt, but it's pretty ruby red. I read that they have voted for a Republican for president every year, except for I think they voted for Jimmy Carter in 1976. Do you think that that's starting to change?
It's changing primarily because the Republican Party has abandoned their voters. They're not the same Republican Party of my father or my grandfather. They have allowed themselves to be, become so extreme to be, their party has been taken over by Donald Trump, and they don't represent the best interests of the majority of Republican voters in my state. So people are looking for a change. I just need to make a case to voters in South Carolina that I'm not what, Fox News wants you to think a Democrat is. I'm a pediatrician, I'm a mom, I'm a problem solver. I actually really am not interested in the title of congresswoman or senator. I see running for office and serving in the US Senate as a path to solve the problems that drove me to get off the sidelines in the first place. The problems that I saw every day when I worked in the children's hospital. This isn't about me, this is about the people of South Carolina, and I am convinced in 2026, in response to Trump's reelection, that people are desperate for a change. And that's what I'm offering voters of South Carolina. It's not about red or blue for me, just like my job as a physician isn't about red or blue. And I have no choice but to feel hopeful about the future of South Carolina because I have 3 kids there in the public school system.
I want to ask you a little more about Lindsey Graham. I've been doing this for a long time, Annie. Not, I guess, wow, longer than Lindsey Graham has been a senator, in fact. And I've interviewed him a number of times. And I often think about the three amigos, his relationship with John McCain and Joe Lieberman. And John McCain, whether you agree with his policies or not, I think he was a man of principles and a decency. And I always wonder, not always, it's not like I'm thinking about this 24/7, Annie, but I have at times wondered what John McCain would think of Lindsey Graham today.
I think about that all the time. And if Lindsey Graham was the senator he was when he was first elected, even though I'm sure I still didn't agree with him on most policy points, if he was still that same senator, I don't think I'd be in this race. But he has really abandoned his principles. And again, I think it is the epitome of what we've seen happen to the Republican Party over the past couple of decades. When Lindsey was first elected, he worked across the aisle. He came up with solutions to South Carolina's problems, and now he's really just up there to serve himself. And, what I've been trying to communicate to folks is the only way to get back to the Republican Party of the John McCain, Joe Lieberman era is for them to lose some elections. Because if they keep winning, they're not going to change. It's just like parenting. We can't be permissive parents anymore. We have to draw the line. There has to be consequences. And if they lose, I promise you, the Republican Party will find its way back to who they used to be. And then, if Republicans in South Carolina want to give me one chance, vote for me once and let the Republican Party come back to the center. And if you don't like what I do, then go back and vote for Republicans again in 6 years. But we can't keep on this pathway that Lindsey Graham is, leading away from common sense in Washington, D.C.
How can you explain Lindsey Graham's behavior, his unabashed and unquestioned fealty to Donald Trump? I mean, he's not the only one. That could be said for the vast excuse me, I'm getting this cold, everyone. I'm sorry. The vast majority, I'm going to ask Annie for some medical advice at the end of this conversation, but the vast majority of Republicans are kind of falling in line and and doing whatever Donald Trump tells them to do. How can you explain this change in Lindsey Graham as you see it?
Yeah, I think power corrupts. And when you've been in the Senate for 22 years and you have special interests in your ear and lining your pockets, for some people, it's easy to lose your way. And that's exactly what has happened to Lindsey Graham. He is only up there to serve the billionaire donors and corporate PAC donors who help him get reelected. His entire career has now been built around the fact that he's a US senator. So if he loses that, I don't think he's going to know what to do with himself. I suggest that he simply retires, but it really is a sad testament for, human behavior. That power corrupts, money and power corrupt, and that's what we're seeing from Lindsey Graham, and that's why we need a change.
What kind of reaction have you gotten, Annie, since you made this announcement 6 weeks ago? I know your announcement video, as the kids say, went viral, and I think it's been seen by about 500,000 people. South Carolina Senate race. What have people been saying, and what kind of feedback are you getting?
I've been overwhelmed by the support that this campaign has received really from all across the country. We have donors from all 50 states. My social media platform has grown, and I care about that because that means there's more eyes and ears on the words that are coming out of my mouth, which are all about how to build a brighter future for America's children and how to build the South Carolina that everyone needs and deserves. It's been a truly overwhelming experience. I mean, just to sit here and be talking to you, this isn't the reception I expected this campaign to get, but it tells me that people are looking for something different. They're looking for something to feel hopeful about, that they believe that better is possible in South Carolina. And I am so fully committed to this campaign, and I can't wait to go to every corner of the state to talk to voters where they are, to listen to them, understand their problems, and together to come up with solutions for them. Because again, I'm a problem solver. I'm in this to come up with solutions to South Carolina's problems. And the response that the campaign launch received is just allowing me to get into more people's feeds so more people can understand what is possible in South Carolina.
Have you had any face-to-face conversations with people who, say, supported Lindsey Graham and perhaps even voted for Donald Trump? And have you been able to convince them that there is another path forward?
Yes, I have. I had a woman come up to me at a private meet and greet event and say she used to be a Lindsey Graham supporter and a Lindsey Graham voter and a Lindsey Graham donor. And she was standing there writing a check to me because she has seen the party abandon her and fellow Republicans. She is worried about cuts to the Medicare program and this is Social Security program that she has paid into her entire life. Folks who are dialed in and receiving fact-based information from their news source understand that this party has left them. And then, the other thing I have is when I show up in a room full of people and I talk to them about why I got off the sidelines and what I'm fighting for, they can very quickly understand that I am actually an authentic person who cares, who is deeply passionate about these issues and is in this to serve the public, not to serve myself. So it's been incredibly gratifying. I wish there were 36 hours in every day so I could talk to more voters. But campaigns are really hard and politics is a dirty business. But when I'm out there talking to voters, it is so life affirming and cup filling and really is giving me the hope that I need to get through this race.
Let me ask you about some of the obstacles, Annie, that I'm sure you will inevitably face, or some of the naysayers, the things that they will say. They'll say, you're a pediatrician. You've never run anything except for your office and your family. But this is what probably some people are going to say. What experience do you have? And they also might say, we don't love Lindsey Graham, but he has been a senator for half your lifetime, as you mentioned, Annie. He has a lot of seniority on Capitol Hill. Pulls his weight or whatever, or his weight to throw around. And I'm curious how you would respond to some voters feeling both of those things, or maybe, both or either.
I mean, first, I'd say what good is holding power if you don't use it for good? And that's what Lindsey's doing. Yes, he's a powerful person in Washington, D.C., but he's not helping people in South Carolina or really doing anything that benefits the majority of Americans. And the second to my qualifications to run for office is I can't imagine a more qualified person than someone who's worked in a children's hospital for nearly 2 decades. That is such a community connected job that every day I take care of kids and their families who are on some of their darkest days. They're sick or they're injured, no matter their background, no matter what part of the state they're coming from, no matter what their insurance status is. I get to care for them. I get to sit down in their darkest moments, listen to their concerns, come up with a plan, and then treat and watch their children get better. And that prepares me so well to meet voters where they are, to talk to voters about what their problems are, and to actually understand these systemic barriers that our kids and families are facing in a way that someone who has been in the US Senate for 22 years has absolutely no idea. He is so disconnected from the daily lives of South Carolinians, just like all of these career politicians. So I am fully confident in saying that I am as well prepared as anyone could be to serve in the US Senate. And that's why I spend a lot of time encouraging other doctors and pediatricians to run for office.
That actually is a great segue to, by the way, well done. That's a great segue to my next question, which is about Medicaid and children's nutrition program, SNAP, and some of the other things that will is will inevitably fray this country's social safety net while giving the wealthiest people in the country major tax breaks. And I'm curious what you're seeing in terms of, and I think that sometimes healthcare is hard for the average person to understand unless they're really on, a part of the Medicaid system. So, can you talk about what you're seeing and what you're afraid? I agree. So authentic, so eloquent, and so relatable. Hi, Elizabeth. And you guys, please ask some questions in the comments of Annie because this is a great opportunity for you all to learn more. And I can't think of all the questions, you guys. So what? Tell me about your concerns when it comes to what I described as this fraying social safety net and what it will mean for children and families all across the country.
Yes, it's devastating. I think most people don't understand that Medicaid is the backbone of children's healthcare in the United States. It is the largest insurer for children in South Carolina and in the country. In South Carolina, it funds nearly 50% of births, nearly 6 out of 10 nursing home beds. You cannot remove that much money from a system and expect the system to continue to function. A lot of people think, well, I'm not on Medicaid. No one in my family is on Medicaid. This won't affect us. But this is what's going to happen. If we kick this many people, millions of Americans off of their health insurance, that doesn't stop them from getting sick or injured. What it does do is prevent them from receiving outpatient primary care. So when they get sick or injured, when they start to get a cold like you are, they don't have a doctor to go to. So they stay at home, they wait until they're so sick they can't take it anymore, and they show up at the one place that is legally required to offer them care,
The
which is the
emergency
emergency.
room.
Right. So emergency departments are going to be overrun, and a larger proportion of the patients in any given emergency department are going to be unfunded. But the hospital provides that care, and they have to pay for that care somehow. So they're going to raise the rates that they charge our private insurance companies, and the private insurance companies are going to therefore raise our premiums. And that's how they're going to initially start to compensate for this giant removal of billions of dollars from the healthcare system. Hospitals are also going to freeze hirings. They're going to cut back on staff. They're going to close down service lines, and they're going to close hospitals. And eventually the entire system will collapse. So this is unsustainable, this coordinated attack on our nation's healthcare system. And I don't think, like you said, I don't think the majority of people understand how devastating this really is.
Also, children's nutrition programs. That's something I'm sure that you see firsthand as well. I'm not sure if you see it in your practice, but how important SNAP is, for example, can you explain that? Because I think that people have this misconception, that people who are using food stamps are buying Pepsi and potato chips. And I don't think they truly understand how critically important it is to families. Can you help us with that?
Yes. Food insecurity is one of the most serious threats to children's health and well being in this country. Millions of American children don't know where their next meal is coming from. That's why programs like school breakfast and school lunches and summer programs to feed children are so critically important. When children aren't fed, they can't learn. They can't become productive members of our society. And what is so sickening about these SNAP cuts, like you said, they like to paint this picture that these are lazy, able bodied adults who are just trying to mooch off of the federal government. And I would challenge those people. Actually, I don't want them in a children's hospital, but I would challenge them to spend one day in a children's hospital taking care of a family with a sick child who has a chronic disease like asthma or sickle cell and watch the struggles these parents go through just to try to make ends meet. And then we're going to rip away the safety net from them that feeds their children, all so we can deliver tax cuts to billionaires. I mean, I think we just need to get back to a place of human empathy and decency. We need more leaders who actually care about the suffering of our fellow Americans. And these cuts will be devastating. More children will fall into food insecurity and hunger. They won't be able to learn, and parents will have no way to make ends meet.
I want to ask you about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. because I know you have strong feelings, as many people do, about his, his appointment as Secretary of Health and Human Services, and really the whole MAHA movement in general. And certainly, as a pediatrician, I'm sure you have strong feelings about the anti-vax movement as well. Can you talk about why you believe this is so dangerous for so many people in this country, especially children?
Yeah, so RFK Jr. is a lawyer who's a grifter and a conspiracy theorist. He has no background in healthcare or science. He clearly doesn't understand basic statistics. He has acquired a lot of personal wealth by peddling an anti vaccine conspiracy theories. The damage that has already been done is devastating to the trust in American families and parents and their physicians and the healthcare system. If he were to resign today, it would still take us decades to recover from the damage that has been inflicted on this country's public health system by RFK Jr. Vaccines are safe and effective. My three children are fully vaccinated. What RFK Jr. is doing is shunting money from critical research programs at the NIH to study the safety and efficacy of vaccines that have already been proven to be safe and effective. It is dangerous and it is irresponsible. More children will get sick, more children will become critically ill, and more children will die because of the lies peddled by RFK Jr. This is a five-alarm fire for anyone who cares about children's health in this country. And it is one of the main reasons I decided to take this dramatic step and run for U.S. Senate.
How can you run? And I'm not going to spend take too much more of your time because I can only imagine how busy you are. Are you still practicing medicine full time, Annie?
Not full time, but I am practicing part time because I find it to be an incredibly grounding experience to spend a few days on the campaign trail and then go back to caring for sick and injured children because it reminds me of why I'm doing what I'm doing. And it reminds me of the urgency of this moment for America's children.
So you're working part time, and then are you actively traveling around the state now?
Yes, I'm actually in the upstate of South Carolina today. I live in the low country, traveling all around the state. It is a juggle, but busy moms are used to juggling a lot of things, and it's certainly something that I'm capable of doing. I have an incredible support system around me, friends and family and neighbors, and I couldn't do this without all of them. But I am so committed to doing this for my own children and every child in this country. And my kids know that. They know I'm fighting for them. And so they are wonderful about giving me grace when I'm not home to tuck them in at bed for bed every night.
Wow. Well, I have to say, you're an incredibly impressive person. Thank you for spending some time talking with us. Thank you, as someone just said. I'm going to, oops, sorry, I just screwed this up. Mary Ellen Newton said, thank you for running. I think to your earlier point, everyone, I don't know if I'm supposed to reintroduce people on Substack, but this is Annie Andrews. She's a pediatrician in South Carolina, mother of three, was involved in Moms Demand Action, and now she's running for Senate against Lindsey Graham. Have you heard from Lindsey Graham since making this announcement at all? I'm just curious, or any of his people?
No, I haven't. I don't think many constituents have heard from Lindsey Graham in a very, very long time. His spokesperson certainly has said a few things about me in the media, which is basically that I have a radical agenda that is out of step with conservative South Carolina. And I'm not sure which part of my agenda they think is radical, whether it's the feeding hungry kids or providing access to health care for more South Carolinians. But that's about all they've had to say about me so far.
And what about donors? Are you tell me about sort of how you're trying to avoid sort of the donor class, if you will, and who you're taking money from and why? Because I know that's a part of your campaign. Because a lot of people obviously think big money is corrupting politics in a big way, which kind of seems like Captain Obvious. But tell us about that.
Yeah, so unlike Lindsey Graham, I will take $0 from corporate PACs. This campaign is just 5 to 6 weeks old. We've had over 38,000 donors from every state in the country. Our average donation is $31. This is a grassroots movement of people who are ready for a new kind of leader in Washington, D.C. Because even though Lindsey Graham is from South Carolina, he affects the lives of everyone in America. So we are happy to be supported by donors from all across this country. And if people want to donate, they can go to drannieandrews.com to donate, to sign up to volunteer. You can text bank and phone bank from anywhere. And the only way we're going to win this is if we have people like you behind us.
Well, it's I was going to say something about Lindsey Graham and the thought just flew out of my head. It must be the fact that I'm getting a cold and kind of am all congested. What should I do for my cold, Dr. Andrews?
You need to sleep, Katie. Maybe
But I sleep
schedule.
a lot.
Okay, you need to sleep, you need to drink lots of water, take ibuprofen, and just rest as okay, you're doing it all. You're doing it all. Just take care of yourself. We've
Does
got a lot.
Zycam work? I've been popping Zycam like it's going out of style, and it seemed to keep it away for a little bit of time. But now I feel like at this point, just go ahead and get a cold and get it over with.
Yeah, I don't think Zycam will harm you, but I'm not convinced it will help either. When it's me, I just drink lots of water, rest as much as I can, and take ibuprofen around the clock.
Well, as I said earlier, you're incredibly impressive, Annie Andrews, Dr. Annie Andrews. And I think that a lot of people, I'm so happy, at least the people who follow me, to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, to let them learn a little bit more about you. And if they feel like your values and their values align, that they can support you in your effort to unseat Lindsey Graham. Very, very nice to meet you. Thanks again for your time. It's been a real pleasure.
Well, thank you, Katie. It's been an honor to talk to you, and thank you for using your platform to uplift my campaign.
All right. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching. Please let me know, other people you'd like me to talk to. Just consider me your vessel or your conduit to important conversations. At this point, I still am able to DM people like Annie and others and convince them to spend some time with me. And I'd love to hear from you all. What kind of interviews you'd like to hear. All right. You get back to your campaign. And Annie, thank you again.
Thank you so much, Katie.
Okay, bye everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Am I doing this right? Hold on. End. Sorry. Sorry, you guys.